in corporate plays. We'll groove through it all in funky ways. So join us now, let's find our way. Listen to Pips and Pivots every single day. Ooh, get money, get paid.
All right, part 2, Chris Cicconi. Part 1, we talked about kind of his journey from like first being a recruiter, then getting into sales and kind of being like a player coach in sales, then getting into business development in SaaS, and then becoming a manager. So real interesting stuff. We talked about Simon Sinek's Know Your Why. So there's a link to that book in the show notes. Either, I'm not sure where I'm going to put that link. It's going to be in the show notes from this week or last week. You can look that up on YouTube too, and it kind of explains it. Another interesting thing Chris talks about, I think in this episode, if it wasn't the last one, but mentorship. And that's something on the second season of Pips and Pivots, this latest batch of interviews, something that's come up like a million times. Just everyone, all these successful people that I'm interviewing, like the majority of them mention how they've utilized like proactively seeking out mentors and coaches outside of their organization. So if you're looking to get a leg up, it's just do extra work. Ask someone to mentor you. And I asked someone, I'm like, well, what do? Is it like asking someone to prom? And they're like, yeah, you just say, hey, I'm looking for a mentor. And, sometimes they're too busy or whatever, and they don't do it, but, just ask. And that's it. So listen to this interview with Chris Cicconi. Enjoy it. Check out all the links in the show notes and go get yourself a mentor.
That I'm not doing. And a lot of it was asking for help and getting mentors and things like that. So yeah, being stubborn has its place in sales, but not all the time.
Yeah. Raise the flag, ask for help. View your manager as like an expert at the job that you're doing, or if they're not, a super awesome salesperson, like they have expertise in areas that you can leverage. And don't be shy about going outside of your sphere too. So even outside of your company, hitting up people on LinkedIn or, other parts of the organization. So I think that's a really important thing. So individual contributor management. Now it looks like you're doing your own thing, right? You're doing a lot of like fractional work. You maybe have your own agency or something. So like kind of explain a little bit about what you're doing, and then how did you decide it was the right time for you to, make that switch? Because that is a big jump, going from guaranteed income to big question mark.
Yeah. There's a few factors around that. So yeah, long story short, I'm doing fractional sales leadership, doing some sales outsourcing, some sales coaching, just anywhere where I can kind of make an impact. And I think for me, how I progressed into this was, so it was always that love of building things, right? So I went from like building in a bigger organization, which I think was a great way for me to start to kind of get that training and that development. Then I went kind of the startup route and started building in different spots. And I think part of the reason why I went to that kind of startup world is, to your point earlier, like I do like that independence and given the opportunity to do what I want. And I think that I don't want to say I have a problem with authority, because I don't have a problem with authority, but I think what I ran into a lot of the time was folks who came in to some of these startups. And again, a lot of times startups have this mentality of like, I'm going to bring in this person and they're going to be my rock and my anchor in sales. And like, we're just going to follow their path, like right off a cliff, if that's what it takes. Yeah. And you start to have these conversations around, hey, cool. Like, I'm good with this decision. Can you explain why? You're like, well, this is why, this is how we've always done it. This is my gut. This is how I believe this should be done. I'm like, cool, but does that make sense right here, right now? So I would challenge a lot and I would push back a lot. And I didn't always get the kind of latitude that I was hoping for in those scenarios. So that made me had me make a couple shorter tenures at startups than I would have liked. Like, I'd been at Aerotech for 10 years, made the jump to my first SaaS role for a couple of years. And then I did like 2 one-year stints at 2 startups. It just wasn't feeling like we were progressing as quickly as we could be given the resources we had. Right. And end up making the jump to another startup, this one local startup, really exciting product, thought it was great, came on board at the beginning of this year, and my first paycheck was late. And then my second paycheck never happened. And I was like, you know what? If I'm not going to get paid here, like, screw it. I might as well not get paid on my own. Right. So it was a mix of that, and it was good timing as well, because I met up with the guys at Unicorn, Chris Ray and Zach Walker, awesome people. They're like, hey dude, if you go out on your own and do your own thing, like, we can kick you some contracts and kick you some stuff for you to do. So it's like, okay, well, now I'm not starting from zero, right? I can take on a couple contracts with them. I've got some, strategic advisor type of stuff going on. I've got a few like brand deals on LinkedIn. So I'm like, well, okay, if I cobble this together, like, I can pay my mortgage. I'm maybe not going on vacation, but I can pay my mortgage, so I'm okay. So that made me decide to go that route. And the cool part about Unicorn is we focus really on that early stage startup, how to move from maybe founder-led sales to start building out a sales team. And, we can come in and go, okay, we'll build the sales, or we'll step in, we'll build the playbook, kind of like what you were talking about before and what you had done in the past, where we can come in and build out that playbook. And then, hey, you want us to help you find some people to step in? Do you want us to just be your sales arm? Do you want to take it back in-house? Like, however you want to do it, we can do it. But kind of gets back to that builder in me of, okay, do we have the ICP? Do we have the messaging figured out? Do we have the right tools in place? Do we have all of that? So it's been fun. It's been interesting. Running your own business is also, from like, you forget from a logistics perspective how annoying it is, where you're like, I have to keep all these receipts and I've got Excel spreadsheets all over the place. Like, so much of that too goes into it. Like, how do I even pay myself? So there's some interesting stuff there. But honestly, for me, it's the fact that I get to be a little bit more picky with what I do on the day-to-day. And I'm lucky that I made those mistakes early in running my own business, because it's only been, a little bit less than a year, but I took on clients that I probably shouldn't have, or I didn't charge them enough, or all that kind of stuff. It's a learning process, but you get there. But yeah, it's the freedom and flexibility to be able to take on the clients I want, to be able to manage my own schedule. I've got a 1.5-year-old, so being able to like go pick her up when I get a phone call saying like, hey, she's coughing up a lung at daycare, makes me feel really good about what I'm doing. So, it was time just from the business perspective of just being in that spot. It was time from a personal perspective of just being more flexible with my life in general. So it's like, it really did feel like the stars aligned, and that it was just the right time to make it work.
Perfect. Yeah. I love it when a plan comes together, even
so
when
good.
it wasn't the plan, right? But and the work you're doing too, like, I think getting to consult with and advise like multiple companies concurrently, you kind of constantly have this rotation. Like, it like pours gasoline on your learning about like sales and go to market and everything, because they all are coming from different places, and they all have, kind of different scenarios, different situations, different ICPs that they're targeting. So like, that's one of the things that I really liked about it. Like, you're constantly doing different things, learning. Like, you talked about some of the playbooks and stuff you're doing. I'm sure the playbook is like slightly different every single time. Every customer, you keep building on it. And it's just like, I feel you learn way more than like, spending, a year and a half at one company, just executing their plan, working with all these different companies. So that's fun, man. That's exciting stuff.
Oh, it's a blast. And it challenges what you think about sales as well. Like, I'm working with a couple clients in higher ed right now. And like, I got in with the first one, and I put together a fairly traditional playbook, and I like started to roll it out, and I was like, oh, higher ed people hate when you call their cell phone. They will straight up be like, just like jump off a bridge. Not cool. So I'm like, okay, learn that real quick. You have to be able to pivot really quickly as well, because you're going to learn some of these things, but like, you slowly start to understand like, okay, but wait, I can go on their university website and find all their contact information. This is great. I'm just going to go dig them up that way. So like, you have to be able to make those pivots quickly, because you are coming in as quote unquote the expert, even if it is a bit of a new field, new industry, new tech. So you have to bring in the sales expertise, even if you don't have the industry expertise. And I think, to your point, that's where you have to like go, hey, I've got this knowledge, I'm missing some of it over here, but like, I have to bridge that gap and have to do it quickly. So you're constantly making those pivots. You're constantly making the changes, like talking about going and asking for help again, like starting like more of a, hey, can I meet with you to interview you about the space and how you like to buy and what you like to buy and who's responsible for what? Like, again, the higher ed one was very new to me specifically. So like we were meeting with higher ups in schools just to understand, like, how do you buy? And a lot of times they responded with like, hey, I never answer a cold call. I never answer a cold email. I will buy because I go to these specific trade shows throughout the year, and that's where I learn about new technology. Or if somebody I know refers a product to me, like those are the two ways I buy. And you're like, well, cool. Let's go look at events to go to. Let's go look at referral programs. So, like asking for help like that is so interesting, because if you can find people who are willing to meet with you and just share that information, you don't have to sell them anything. And you get such a big piece of knowledge that helps you pivot how you're approaching sales as a whole.
Hell yeah. And who knew, if you actually talk to the customers, and ask them what they like to do, like it can help you, right?
Chris, like
instead of just trying to hammer your sales process down their throat.
Dude, my pet peeve, and like this, I remember one instance of this specifically, but it's kind of happened throughout my career of, okay, let's get the whole sales and marketing org in a boardroom. Let's lock the door and let's come up with our whole grand plan of messaging and the whole thing. And I'm sitting there looking around being like, who knows if anybody actually wants to hear this shit? Like, can we ask a prospect or a client maybe? Like, we have clients. Can we put one of them in the room and have any understanding if this is important to them? Like, us as salespeople sitting there deciding what our prospects think is important is just wild to me.
Yeah. No, that's the money move though, talking to the customers. And that's why, like, you see this on LinkedIn, like all these people always post like, oh, here's my sequence. That's, it's the best sequence ever. And it's like, there's so many nuances between verticals and niches. And it's like, okay, was this SMB or was it enterprise? Were you selling to plumbing companies? Were you selling to software companies, marketing departments, HR departments? Like, what the fuck are you trying to position this awesome sequence as? Like, and the reason why it pisses me off is because there's like BDRs, people earlier in their career, they're going to see that. They're like, oh, I'm going to do this exactly. And it's going to be the completely wrong thing that what they should be doing. And they're going to be put on a PIP or, let go or something as a result of it. So that is actually probably my biggest pet peeve. And it comes from, I think, my background of like wanting to develop and train junior sales folks, and why I made the pivot into like business development and hiring BDRs and all that is because, to your point, there are so many of them that like just have shitty leaders, right? They don't have the support internally they need. So they go looking externally for that. And you know what? Yes, I agree with you that they go find something stupid on LinkedIn that doesn't apply to their industry at all. And they go and they slap it into outreach and they go blast a bunch of people with it. And like, that sucks. And it does not end well. What kills me is the creators who go out there and create all these like courses, and then they sell them to people for like $99, this course on how to be do the best outreach ever. Yeah. Like, dude, you're literally taking money out of like a BDR's pocket that you have no business taking money out of, because they don't know any better. And then they're going to go apply your like shit, and then it's going to go sideways. And don't get me wrong, I'm all for people like getting paid. I have no issue with it. It's when you take advantage of junior people that don't know any better is what kills me. Like, I coach, I'm all for coaching because we can sit down face to face and have a discussion about who's your.
This is Noah. Noah sells software. He's not LinkedIn famous or anything, but he's a solid sales rep. And like a lot of us, he's faced some serious bad luck over the past few years. First, there was a layoff due to COVID, then came a rift due to economic headwinds. And just when he thought he'd found the right fit, the company he was at got acquired and he was let go shortly thereafter. Noah's resume looks bad, like really, really bad, and he worries that his luck is never going to change. He fears this pattern of bad luck is going to continue, and he's going to be constantly looking for the right job. His confidence is at an all-time low. In his weakest moments, he wonders if maybe sales just isn't for him. It's not just about finding the next role, it's about finding stability and overcoming the perception that he's a job hopper and unreliable. Noah discovers a course called Elevate Your Sales Career, designing a 5-year plan for success. It promises to arm him with insights, knowledge, and frameworks to determine exactly what he needs to do to change his luck and turn his career around. After taking the course, Noah steps back into the job market with confidence and a reliable plan for a stable, successful future in sales.
No issue with it. It's when you take advantage of junior people that don't know any better is what kills me. Like, I coach, I'm all for coaching because we can sit down face to face and have a discussion about who's your TAM, who's your ICP, what personas are you reaching out to, what tools are you using, what do you know about them? Let's craft something customized to you, not let's just go take this template and assume it's going to work, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you'd have the same luck just using like the templated cadences that are in whatever platform you're using. You know, it's no different at all. I want to talk a little bit about one thing that I saw you mention in a video once. I saw it on your LinkedIn, but you have a side hustle too that you've been doing for a while with the e-gaming stuff.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, everyone, probably 70% of the people listening to this have some kind of side hustle. So I'm always curious about like scaling your side hustle and the time management piece and not letting it affect like your 9-to-5 work and not letting your 9-to-5 work, you know, make you neglect the side hustle piece.
Yeah. So this, it's actually really interesting because the side hustle kind of came from an attempt to improve my sales skills. So what happened was during the pandemic. So at Aerotech, I always sold face-to-face. At HR Wise, I was selling like probably 80% of our business was local. So again, mostly face-to-face, a few Zoom calls here and there sprinkled in. Then the pandemic happens. And now all I'm doing is selling to a screen, which like I am very much not used to. I'm also a giant nerd and, you know, from like the Mario Legos and stuff, if you can't tell, but I've always been into gaming and all that kind of stuff. And I have a buddy of mine whose literal career it is he streams on Twitch and broadcasts esports events. Like that's how he gets paid, travels around or does it from his bedroom, either one. So I was like, hey buddy, can you like just help me get, like, I just want to get more practice talking to a camera and talking to a screen, and like playing games online seems like something I'd probably do in my spare time anyway. I have a lot of it since we're all locked down and not going anywhere. Kind of mess around with that a bit. And he like helped me get everything set up and the webcam and the microphone and the tools and all that. So I was having fun doing that. And then he worked with a production company he introduced me to. And so they were saying like, hey, well, if you want to come like host some events for us and things like that. So I ended up hosting some events. And the beauty of this stuff was most of it was like evenings and weekends, really. So it never interfered so much with the 9-to-5. Yeah. So I was able to like, hey, Saturday spend, 4 hours talking about video games on the internet and get paid money for it. And I was like, this is cool. Can I do more of this? So I worked with them to, we had a couple extra clients that I managed to get involved with, and then, start doing like little demo reels and stuff and start passing that around. Not that it ended up with a ton, but, same principle where like, if I can 1 or 2 weekends a month, spend half a day doing something like this, good practice talking to, a screen, gets a couple bucks made and, doing something fun. That's it's a bit of a change of pace, and like, it's turned into some interesting stuff. So I traveled to one of the companies we work with, one of the gaming companies. Their headquarters is in Iceland. So traveled to Iceland twice to host the World Championships for the game. They're like, they're like, we'll pay you X amount of dollars. I'm like, you're going to fly me to Iceland and put me up in a hotel for like 4 days? Sure, pay me, whatever. But like, it's a free trip. I'll take it. Let's do it.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And so like, I've tried to be a little bit more involved with that stuff, because again, it's like, it's a fun change of pace. And now doing the fractional work, I can organize my life around it a bit more. So I'm working with them to put on a production we're actually doing a production in Vegas next year. So I'm working behind the scenes on that one, but we're actually going down there to scout out a venue and stuff in the next couple of weeks. So, it's been one of those, it's been one of those things that we've been like, I've been able to, it was never going to bring me enough income to ever like take any chunk from what I was doing in a 9-to-5, but an extra kind of spending money on the side. And, I always kind of saved that for my like silly Lego purchases and things like that. Right. That was like my fun spending account. So I did that. And then, now that I have a bit more time, I've been just a little bit more involved and asking them what else I can do. So I've started to work on different stuff, but like the side hustle thing is so challenging because I think it can very quickly eat up your 9-to-5, right? It's so easy to say like, oh yeah, well, I can squeeze that one like 30-minute meeting in to like do something. And then it's like, I can start squeezing that hour in, then I can start squeezing in an hour every day. And then all of a sudden, your performance in your current role is starting to drop. And I think I think it's also very dependent on who you work for. Cause I think there are some folks who just see you're doing a side hustle and go like, I don't like that. Cause that means you're not, spending your 100% here, even if it is nights and weekends. So like, there's a bit of you have to figure out where you're at and like how that's going to impact your day to day. I think less so from like a work perspective, but also from a perception perspective.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. That's a good point. And I think that's a really good story about kind of just, again, following the things you're curious about and without any kind of expectation, really, like, oh, I'm going to make, tons of money on this. And then because you're excited about something, you're passionate about something, you're going to excel at it. And then, success and opportunities and money will eventually come from it. And the part about, balancing it with your 9 to 5, that's like what I do is I book time my first hour of the day from 8 to 9. I do my side piece stuff. And then from 5 to 7, I have my calendar open for side hustle stuff. And it's all fun and games until like you get really busy with both. And so you're just working from like 8 to 7 every day. And it's like, oh shit, I need to start like charging more money. And, it's a great problem to have, I guess.
But that's exactly it, right? Like, and that was kind of my first little while at like doing my own thing where I'm like, I am so busy and I'm not getting paid nearly enough for the work I'm doing. And you only start to realize that when you get busy, because when things are quiet, you're like, I'm getting paid and I'm doing work. This is good. Then you're like, I can't take on more clients and my revenue is not where I want it to be. So how do I balance that out? But I think to your point, when it comes to a side hustle thing, I think it's just important to like not assume it's ever going to be your 9 to 5 or it's going to take over your 9 to 5, right? Like do things you enjoy, do things you're passionate about, take that revenue as like just extra cash, whether it is to pay the bills or it's just to like save it for your hobby or whatever else you want to do. Like I think if you keep that mindset, it keeps it healthy. And then you might hit that point where you're like, hey, I think I can flip this and grow it. And like, that's great too, if it gets to that point. But I think if you put pressure on yourself to get there, I think that's where it becomes a bit more challenging.
Excellent. All right. I got 2 questions for you and we'll end with these. But the first one, I want you to speak directly to someone who's very early in their career. They're an individual contributor in sales and they want to move into sales leadership eventually. What are like maybe 2 or 3 things they can start doing in their current role to set them up to graduate into that?
Step 1, and I will say this about anything always all the time, is make sure you are excelling in your own role. I think a lot of times any other feedback or advice you might get can kind of detract from what you're doing in your day to day. And I think that can be problematic. So like, you don't want to be just squeaking by on quota. Like you want to be, 110, 120%. And like, you need to stay there consistently because if you're not performing where you need to be, like you're not even going to get considered for that next role.
Yeah.
I think then the next thing is looking for opportunities to do the job before you get the job. That was always something that was kind of taught to me. So like, look at your peers, right? If you are excelling at your role, like look at who can you help around you? Who can you help succeed? Who can you help excel? And like that's twofold now. First of all, you feel pretty good about it because if you can help your buddy, your coworker, your colleague excel, that's great. It looks good on you, right? Hopefully they're going and singing your praises to everybody as well. And I think that transitions nicely into the third piece, which is like you have to be able to navigate if you want this to be an internal move, like you have to know how to navigate internally, right? Have to know who the levers are you need to pull and you have to build relationships with them. So make it clear that this is what you want to do. Ask people for advice internally. And like we were talking a bit before about, leveraging your leader for help in your current role. But something else that I think is undervalued is using your leader to help you navigate internally, right? Yeah. Like they're going to better know who you need to go to and who you need to build a relationship and who likes you and maybe who you need to work on a bit more. So I think all those steps, like you need to excel, you need to do the job and you need to know who has to know you want that to be able to get into that role.
Yeah. And if they're a good leader, they should be concerned about your career development. Like it shouldn't be a threat to them in any way for you to be like, hey, I want to be a manager. Maybe I want to get your job or something. You can get promoted, like, that type of deal. Like, they should be facilitating that. That should be something that motivates them.
Oh, 1,000%. And like, I think exactly to your point, if I'm as a leader, like if I want to move up in the organization, I need to backfill myself. Right. Yeah. And if I can have somebody who can backfill me when I get promoted, that makes that a lot easier. So like, I think there are opportunities there to, again, like that start with why, right? Like it's win-win for everybody. It looks good on like, as a leader in general, it looks good on you if you are able to develop your people and help them move up, right? Like if you have, and that's what I loved about leading BDR is I can look back and go, well, I hired these 10 people. A few of them are just excelling in their role. A couple are AEs. One moved into marketing. One moved into a recruiter role. Like they've moved across the organization. Like that's really cool and feels good to me. Also looks really good on me that I'm able to cultivate that talent and help people move around.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Cool. Now, the second question, kind of the same deal, but if you're talking to someone who maybe they're moonlighting a little bit, they're working full time, they eventually want to make that transition into full-time working for themselves, like maybe one or two pieces of advice you would have for that person.
I think the first thing you have to look at is, and this is honestly was one of my problems, or it still kind of is in my business, is that I looked at what I can do to get myself paid, essentially, right? And like, I like coaching people, I can do that. I like fractional sales leadership, I can do that. Outsourcing, like, yeah, I can make a cold caller 300. Cool. And so I started doing that. And I think then I stopped and went, well, wait a second. Do I actually enjoy doing all of these things? I was like, the sales outsourcing, I like doing enough of it to be able to say that I built you a playbook and I executed the playbook and it works. Once I've proven it works, like I don't need to sit here and make 1,000 calls for you. Like this is your playbook, you execute on it now. And like that was a transition that I need to start making. So I think that's one thing you need to look at is it's cool that you can do some things, but do you actually want to make that your day-to-day? Is that something you love doing? Because if you're going to work for yourself and you're going to hate what you're doing, that's going to add additional stress onto not having a salary, running your own business, doing all the admin bullshit you have to do. And now you don't even like what you do all day. Like there is no point in that. So I think the number one thing is to figure out what you actually enjoy doing. Like that's step one. And then step two, kind of the same principle as if you're looking to get promoted, like try to find from a side hustle perspective, some of those clients that you can do some stuff with, after hours or really early or at the end of the day. Like if you need to start a bit early and you can carve out 4 to 5 to make some calls for a different client, or same thing, like you said, 9 to 10, and then maybe you work a little extra to make sure you're getting your hours in, and you can build up like, hey, I've got like 2 or 3 clients. And if I make that bridge now, I've got, enough to cover a little bit. Like you're going to always have to make a jump when you're not quite ready for it. But if you can start building up a little something, and maybe it's not clients, maybe it's your reputation, maybe it's referrals, maybe it's references, maybe it's, you go onto one of these platforms where you're creating content and you've got, people leaving you reviews. Like give yourself something to build off of. So you're not starting from absolute zero, just because the runway is going to be a lot longer and you're going to be in a situation where you're likely to kind of hit a wall and not want to continue on.
Stick to the things you love because it's going to be tough. So you want to make sure you're doing work you enjoy and test the waters a little bit first. Don't just do a cannonball into the deep end of the pool and then you figure out it's frozen and you break your tailbone.
Yep, exactly. Nobody wants to sit on one of those blow up rings.
Yeah. I had, so in that first sales job when I was a player coach, you would, the reps would get someone on the phone, a business owner, and then they'd go TO, and you'd come and you'd try to close them. And one of my reps was this woman. She had one of those blow up rings that she sat on, and it was so creepy to sit on her chair and take her calls. To have that thing on my ass, like, why do you have this? Is it like a tailbone thing, a hemorrhoid thing? I don't know, but it's creeping me out either way.
One of my good buddies in high school, like it's just being like 14 years old is like the worst time to sit on one of those things because you broke your tailbone. It did not end well for him. Still one of my best buddies, but it was not a good few months.
That was a horrible time for him. So we'll end with this. So like, how can people connect with you? And is there anything you would like to promote?
Yeah, I mean, connect with me on LinkedIn. Search Chris Cicconi. I don't think there's too many of us. You should be able to find me. I will usually share my ramblings about, whatever I think the state of sales is currently. So you can jump in there. I do, sales coaching, fractional sales leadership, all my links and stuff are all on my LinkedIn. So the easiest way to dig that up is there. Starting to do a little bit of YouTube with one of the unicorn founders, Zach Walker, called The Startup Guys. So we're trying to put some content out there to help those founders who are, getting their feet wet in the sales world to just help get them going. So some tips and tricks around that kind of stuff. So you can probably look up The Startup Guys on YouTube and dig that out as well. Speaking of side hustles, I figured if I start one company in a year, why not start two? So something that I'm very low key putting together with two buddies of mine is actually a coffee company. So we have started roasting coffee, arcroasters.com. If you want to go to it, arcroasters.com. There is nothing on the website except for a place to put your email in where we can email you next time we roast coffee. So that is where we're at. Very early stages, but again, like talking about finding things you love, and we figured out a way that we can do this in, a couple hours a week. So I'm going to mess around with it and see what happens. Yeah. Worst case, I got a bunch of coffee to drink, whatever.
Hell yeah, dude. A lot of fun stuff. Well, that's great. Again, super grateful for your time and for coming on here.
Of course.
I know how busy you are after talking to you. So, and this has been great. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Chris.
So that was it with Chris Cicconi. I hope you enjoyed it. Interesting guy. I liked hearing about all his side hustles, like just crazy stuff that he's starting. I'm always interested about the time management part of that, because I have like some, this podcast is like a little bit of like a side piece, a side quest, so it's the time management piece is always kind of, it's interesting to me just to learn what people are doing to be more efficient. So go check out the links in the show notes. Connect with Chris Cicconi on LinkedIn. He has a free LinkedIn starter guide on there right now. He has a link to Topmate and his contact info where you can work with him. I'd work with him. He's pretty cool. And if you enjoyed the podcast, please like and subscribe. Leave comments. I see them. I reply to the comments. One of the great things about listening to this podcast right now is that if you want to, you can interact with me directly really easily. Like I have this woman in Nigeria who's like my super fan, and she would like, if I was late releasing an episode in season 1, she would definitely like hit me up and let me hear about it. But it was so cool. Like I would think if you're watching a show or listening to something and you're like, one of a handful of people that are like, really interacting with it, like you could actually like talk to the person. So yeah, if you want to ask me questions, just do so in the comments, and it could be anything at all, like anything career related. Maybe you can get some like, free career coaching in the comments here. Go ahead and do it. But, please like, subscribe, comment, share it with friends, and go to my website, dankow.ski. It's just my last name with a period. And just take advantage of all the free crap. I have a bunch of free like calculators. There's a path to quota calculator, which it boggles my mind how like more people aren't taking advantage of it. Like they download all this other, like I have career guides and those are kind of the most popular things, but the path to quota calculator is like the coolest thing. You just look at your quota, how many meetings you sent, how many opportunities you got, how many people you reached out to in a given time frame, and you punch it in this calculator, and it tells you, okay, you need to reach out to this many people every week to hit your quota. Next. I mean, I think it's awesome. Like as a sales rep, I used to do that, and it would take a lot of pressure off me. So do that. Sign up for the newsletter. If you like any of my content on Twitter, on the podcast, on LinkedIn, sign up for the newsletter. There's stuff there that's not on any of those platforms, and it's pretty cool. It's pretty chill. And also, if you're serious about your career, if you're looking for direction in your career, if you want to get from where you're at now to some point up here and you don't know how, sign up for my career course. It's on my website. It's the greatest thing that I've ever built in the world. And I think it's like the most useful and helpful thing that I've ever come up with. And other than that, like I sincerely appreciate you taking the time out of your week, out of your day to listen to this. So thank you very much. Love you. Bye.